Hey guys, Michael Marshawn, your Choose to Win coach, back with you again for episode 4 on this Ziglar Wheel of Life series. Now, if you're just joining us, this is episode 4, and the last 2 episodes we have covered the spiritual and the mental spoke. If you go all the way back to week 1, that's where we covered the overview and the actual assessment. If you have not seen that video, then I would recommend pausing this and going back to episode 1. 3 weeks ago and watching that, because that is going to be all relevant information, and we'll give you the actual link to the assessment so that you can take that and follow along as we break down each spoke along the way. So what are we going to be covering in today's episode? Episode 4, recap of what we covered so far. Just give you a quick overview of what we covered so far, the 10 components of the physical spoke. And we're going to take it a step further than that, as we try to do, take a little bit deeper dive into those 10 spokes. We're going to give you the 3 keys to physical health. Now, there is 10 components that make up the physical spoke, but we're going to focus specifically on 3 of them because we want you to have actionable items that you can take away. And then the 3 main body types. This is actual physical body type, because genetics, like it or not, does play a role in our body type, and it plays a role in what we're going to be more susceptible to. So in an effort to work with our bodies and not against it, we're going to kind of loosely define the 3 major body types so that you have some idea of what is going to work best for you. PC and BAAM, not politically correct, although there's enough of that going around these days. This is persistent consistency, and more specifically, how do we apply that persistent consistency using the BAAM method? And then closing and key takeaways, because we want to actually apply what we're learning to our lives and not just come away with the knowledge. So without further ado, we're going to be diving in here. Again, we are in the physical spoke this week. As I mentioned previously, we were in the mental and the spiritual spoke the last 2 weeks. So collectively, those 3, the mental, spiritual, and physical spokes, make up or have the biggest impact on how we see ourselves, our self-image. So that is largely the reason that we are starting with those 3 spokes, because if we have a clear and healthy self-image, then it makes it much easier to improve in the other areas. And while the physical spoke is by far not the only spoke, it is, in my opinion, the most important, or the most relevant, if you will, because if you think about it, having financial success, having personal success, family success, having success in all 6 areas, if you have 10 out of 10 in all 6 of the other areas, but you're lying in a hospital bed because your physical health is so poor that you really have no capacity to enjoy the fruits of any of your labor. So, in my opinion, that makes the physical spoke not only the most relevant, but one of the most important, because everything else you do is kind of null and void if your physical health is not there to support it. Every spoke has 10 components, and that gives you the assessment points. So ranking yourself from 1 to 10 on each of those gives you your overall score. And that is going to tell you specifically how well you're doing in that area. Because obviously, if we just said physical, that is way too broad. But breaking it down into individual points gives you an ability to get more minute and more focused on specific areas that you need change. So recap of key points from episode 3. Now, the spiritual spoke summed up in one word, and again, that word was trust, because everything with spiritual spoke is foundationally about relationships, whether that's relationships with yourself, relationships with others, relationships with the higher power, if you believe in that. Whatever the case may be, it's about trust. We covered the 10 components that make up a strong spiritual spoke and took that a step further and took a look at the 68 qualities of success. And then, of course, we had some closing and key takeaways because we want to actually apply what we're learning. So if you did the homework, then you should have pinpointed an area of overlap between the 10 qualities that are most important to success in your life right now and the 10 qualities that you needed to work on the most. So finding that overlap gives us kind of the optimal points where we can get the most change for our effort. So moving right along, the 10 components of a physical spoke, just like there are 10 components with all the other spokes, a physical spoke has 10 components, and those are appearance, regular checkup, energy level, muscle tone, regular fitness program, weight control, diet and nutrition, stress control, endurance and strength, and getting enough sleep. So while there is 10, it's very hard to focus on 10 areas. So maybe you're strong in most of these, but if you're going to put your energy and your focus into one area, it should be one of these three key areas, and those are highlighted in red there. So regular fitness program, that's very simply put, just exercise. Now, diet and nutrition is going to be basically what are we feeding ourselves? What's fueling our bodies? And then getting enough sleep, because without rest, eventually we're going to die because our bodies need to rest and they need to recover. Those are the three key components. So while all 10 of those areas collectively make up the physical spoke, those three are going to be the most important to your physical health. And then, of course, genetics, like it or not, does play a part in it. I wish you could change genetics as easily as you could change some other things, but unfortunately, that's not the case. So there are, generally speaking, this is kind of a broad overview, but just so you can get an idea of where you're at. And then there is an assessment that I will attach into the comments or the description as well. And that will actually give you a series of questions so you get a better idea of what your body type actually is. And the whole reasoning behind that is because different body types are going to respond differently to nutrition, exercise, all those types of things. So knowing what type of body you have is going to help you optimize your efforts so you're not working against your body, but rather working in harmony with it. Because again, everything we're doing here is about balance. And it's about making small changes. So finding the small changes that will give you a big impact for your particular body type can be very helpful. Ectomorph. So the ectomorph is somebody that has a very high metabolism, and they have such a high metabolism, they actually have a hard time gaining weight. So you have probably had a friend or have a friend that's like that, where they can basically stuff their face and eat whatever they want, and they literally don't gain an ounce. And they probably eat all the time because their metabolism is so high. That's going to be your ectomorphs. Now, your mesomorphs, those are kind of stereotypically you would call them the jocks. You know, they're people that just look at a pair of weights or look at a dumbbell and they're already building muscle. You know, they burn fat pretty easily, but they also build muscle very easily. So they're capable of gaining muscle weight and muscle mass and definition very easily. And then you have your endomorphs. And then you have your endomorphs. Now, your endomorphs are kind of the opposite end of the scale, no pun intended, but they are the ones that are going to gain weight pretty easily. They're going to have a harder time losing it. They're going to have a harder time gaining muscle, but they are also going to get fatigued very easily. So most people, and this is a good news for anybody that's freaking out because you sound like you fit in one of those categories. The good news is that 95% of people fit into multiple categories. You're a blend of two of those three body types. So you can take an assessment and that will give you, it's just a little quick assessment, that'll give you an idea of what body type you are. Knowing this is going to help you tailor to your particular body type what you need. So you're working for it and with it rather than against it, because ectomorph and endomorph are completely opposite ends of the spectrum. And doing what works for an ectomorph is going to cause an endomorph to gain lots of weight. So the only reason I really bring that up is to let you know that yes, genetics does play a part in it. And yes, you may be predisposed to a particular body type. I myself tend more towards the endomorph. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to automatically gain weight or be sluggish. No, it just means that I have to manage my intake and I have to manage my exercise. And I can't just go eat whatever I want because I'm not an ectomorph. So the point, guys, is that whatever your genetics gave you, you can't change that, but you can work with them to get the most bang for your buck. And that gets us into the PC, not the politically correct again, not politically correct, but persistent consistency. To break this definition down, now consistency is having a worthwhile goal and working on it daily or as often as needed. And so persistency is taking that work up a notch every time you do it. So instead of putting the same effort in, again, it's increasing it a little bit. Think of the 1% rule. If you increased everything you did by 1%, that would have a huge impact in the long run. And that brings us to the BAAM method, the block and a male box. Now, when Zig Ziglar was trying to get back in shape, he was so out of shape by his own admission that he could not even run a whole block. So the solution that he came up with was something he called the block and a mailbox. And that perfectly illustrates the persistent consistency aspect because it's being persistent. So he committed to doing what he needed to do. He had a goal of losing weight and being able to run 5 miles. Those were his goals. So to do that, he committed to consistently run one block every single day. So he ran one block every single day. And then the persistent aspect of that was he committed that at the end of each week, he was going to add a mailbox. So the first week, he ran one block and stopped and walked back home. The second week, he ran one block, kept going to the next mailbox, and then turned around and came home. The third week, you guessed it, he added another block. So he ran a block and two mailboxes. And he kept doing this, not big changes, very, very minute changes, but he was consistent with it. And he was persistent in the sense that he added and increased his effort every single week. So Zig Ziglar got to his weight goal, but he also got to the point where he could run 5 miles without stop. This coming from a guy who couldn't run even one block. And the only real change that he made to his routine was adding one mailbox a week. And that just goes to show you guys the compounding effort and the compounding effect of increasing even ever so slightly that effort can have huge, huge results. And that brings us to our final thoughts, guys. Again, the whole goal of this series is not about perfection. It's about finding balance, but it's about improving and making small changes in each of those areas. So the reason I started this series is because I wanted everybody to have a baseline of where they are. And that's the purpose of the first episode, is to give you an assessment, to give you a baseline of exactly where you are. And then going forward, now that you know where you are, this gives you the practical tools and the insights into each area so you know how to make real changes. And again, we're not going for perfection, because the fastest way to success is to replace bad habits with good ones. So that's all we're trying to do. And again, this week is no different. I want you to take those three keys, the three keys to physical health: the exercise, the diet, and the sleep. Now, whatever one of those you need to focus on, maybe you're good in all three of them, but if you're being really honest, there's probably areas for improvement. So whether that's exercising, whether that's eating right, or whether that's getting enough sleep, it's about small changes. If you're doing the exercise and you can't even run a block, then take the BAAM method. If you're trying to eat better, then just find one food or one thing that you know you're not supposed to be eating, or that's not the best choice. For me, that's sugar. I love sugar. I have a sweet tooth. So I actually got with my trainer today, my nutrition coach, and I committed with them to going on a 3-week sugar fast. So basically, I'm going to not change anything else about my diet, but I'm going to give up sugar. And I'm just going to cut sugar out, just a small change that I can make. And they promised me that at the end of 3 weeks, I won't even crave it anymore. So we'll see if that's true, but I'm going to do my part. And I'm going to commit to making that small change. That's a persistent consistency in action. So whether it's going to bed 15 or 20 minutes earlier, whether it's taking a walk in the morning or the evening, whatever it may be for you, find that small change, find that persistent consistency where you can consistently work on a goal and step it up a notch. Whatever that looks like for you, that's what I want you guys to focus on this week. Not all three areas, just one area. So continue to work on the changes that we have made last week. We want to be consistent with that. We want to add to it by adding a new physical component this week. And of course, come back next week. We're going to be talking about the family. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Really want to get this video out there. So if you could share it, that would be great. And of course, as I do with all my videos, I'm going to throw the offer out there, because I know some of you are at a point where you're like myself. I just needed to call in some professional help because I wasn't getting the results and I needed the accountability, quite honestly. So I called in a nutrition coach because I needed somebody to keep me accountable, to make sure that I was going to do the things that I said. So there is nothing wrong with that. And if that's what you need in your life, then getting a coach could be the perfect thing for you. So I'd love to offer you guys a discovery call. And of course, I do have a limited number of these, and my calendar is filling up pretty quickly right now. So I do want to get you guys in, but I can't do anything until you take the first step. So reach out to me, let me know you're interested, and I will do my best to find a time that works for both of us. And of course, nothing changes until something changes, guys. So the ball is back in your court. You're doing the first step by watching these videos. And I want you to give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email, and let's get something on the books so we can get some real change in your life. Anyway, again, don't forget to like and subscribe. Come back next week for the Family Spoke, and keep up that persistent consistency, guys.